Now it got taken off.
Taken off what?
Never mind. Just ignore me. It's been a day.
All right, hold on. I'm looking over last second. I just read Dwight's reaction to Delvin White ejaculation.
Please don't say that.
I like you to wait till it says live in the top right corner for you to say that.
We have 0 viewers. It's fine.
Edit.
All right. All right. All right, you guys ready to go?
Yep.
All right, everybody, and welcome back to week 2 of the Devy Owner's Manual. My name is Adam Wilde, and I'll be your host with my co-hosts, Andrew and Dwight, both from DAHH, Dynasty Happy Hour. Now, we've had a lot going on over the past weekend, so let's just jump right into it. Ohio State lost. How do you feel about that, Andrew?
Well, I would have to say they were the only team I think that had a chance, keyword is chance, at beating an Alabama team in the playoff. I still think they make the playoff, but I think a lot of their weaknesses were shown. I think if you can get pressure on Haskins, he'll panic, and his stats show that when he's under pressure. And with that Alabama defense, I think they would have a field day with Haskins. But they've had a field day with everybody. So, I mean, Just doing it against Haskins would be a louder play.
Yeah, the defense is what – the defense scared – the defense is what really was a takeaway for me. There are a few pro prospects on there. Sheffield is one of my top cornerbacks, and they typically have that talent. They're loaded with talent everywhere, and their defense just looked absolutely ridiculous. They couldn't tackle anything. It was crazy to be exposed by a Purdue team, which is a very dangerous team. They have played well at times this year. So there was definitely writing on the wall that it could be there. But to get beaten that bad, just crazy. Travis May is smiling. Still probably. So.
Now, what do you think about the Clemson domination, though?
Yeah, the same thing. It definitely, I'm sure Andrew will cop to this later, but it showed Ryan Finley definitely showed his weaknesses. But Clemson, I mean, they're supposed to dominate a team like that. I mean, that's what their defense is built for. And I still think they're just running into that clash with Alabama. So it's going to happen.
Last week, I made the prediction that I made the baseball analogy as well. They've been pulling pitchers in baseball lately the third time they go through the lineup so they don't face them because they haven't figured out. Well, Clemson threw a no-hitter. Actually, they threw a perfect game, really. I need smacked in the face for my prediction because it wasn't even close from the beginning. That Clemson defense reminded everybody, especially that defensive line, who they are. Look just as good as when they beat Alabama in the title game a couple years ago. I think Trevor Lawrence, he had his first 300-yard passing game. And plus, they dominated NC State without ETN really having that much. He got the goal line scores and took a couple touchdowns that way. But other than that, I think he had 30-some rushing yards. So it really just spoke as a complete Clemson win. And Ryan Finley, which we'll dive into later, this quarterback class, I'm going to pull a Kyle Krabs and start drinking on air.
Now that's a perfect segue. So we're going to get into some stock ups and some stock downs. This is personally my favorite subject that we dive into because this tells me the players that I need to start caring about or the players I'm not as excited about. I know you just mentioned the QB class. We're excited about that because we've got some guys that frankly just need replaced, in my opinion, and most Eli is one, and apparently that's going to be an early draft pick. So who are your stock ups and stock downs for the week, Andrew?
I would say my biggest stock up, and it was someone I alluded to last week, I wanted to have a wide receiver step up in the receiving class to take Metcalf's place. I've been critical of A.J. Brown. I've written articles being critical of A.J. Brown. He stepped up this past weekend, catching 10 balls for 155 yards and a touch against Auburn, who usually puts out a stout defense. I was really impressed with his footwork on the one play where he pulled a Chad Johnson, stopped on a dime on the sideline. It was very impressive. Everyone was playing that everywhere. I think if he can continue to perform that way to close out the season, I can't remember off the top of my head if Ole Miss is trending to be bowl eligible or not, but him continuing to do that and doing it in a bowl, which on national vision, will certainly help his stock with everyone. And plus, if you have him in Devy in any college leagues, you're loving it because now he's getting a huge target share when there's not a whole lot of other targets. And then as far as a stock down, this is, as I alluded to a second ago, this 2019 quarterback class, if you are in Dynasty and you need a quarterback, you need to trade for Mitchell Trubisky, Baker Mayfield, literally anybody from the last two classes, because this coming in class, I don't know what's going to happen. I think it's going to be similar to the 2013 class where you're going to have teams reaching if Herbert stays. If Herbert declares, Herbert's still the only one I think that's worth taking a grab. Everyone else seems to be a project. Jarrett Stidham, his offensive line hates him. Jones down at Duke. He's been the new hot name thrown out there. But Dwayne Haskins looked bad against Purdue and against the pass rush. Just I need somebody to step up. And I'm hoping somebody does that between now and the draft, but it doesn't look good at this point.
Yeah, I was listening to Sunday podcast this morning, and they said the same thing about the quarterbacks, that it looked like everybody was taking themselves out of first-round consideration at this point, and it's going to be really hard to get anybody in the first round other than Herbert at this point. As far as my stocks up and down, Jerry Jeudy at Alabama. I mean, Alabama receivers, they've always had really good receivers, but he definitely looks like he's getting into a realm of his own that many didn't think he could get to. He's averaging 25 yards a catch this year, 10 touchdowns with an actual real quarterback for once. And he looks amazing. He gets open. He's got great footwork, great route running. He's one I'm really excited about. And as far as down, obviously the Ohio State defense. I mean, I've said enough about them, and I'm sure they're running sprints all this week and everything. So they got absolutely torched. And for a team that's used to pumping out the defensive talent, and they're definitely missing Bosa up front, and yeah, they just looked ugly.
Now, was there anybody specifically on the Ohio State defense that you were looking to draft next year that you're not so excited about anymore?
Not really. There was Sheffield was one of the top cornerbacks. That's the only one that I can think of, but other than that, they didn't have a standout one yet, but they've always had somebody come up the pipeline. Right. You know, they've always had decent linebackers. They've always put out a good safety here and there, and just, yeah, I need to delve into it a little more, but I'm staying away from Ohio State defense as far as at this point.
Sure, and Devin White got ejected, so with missing him half of the Alabama game, who needs to step up for that LSU defense?
I like Jacob Phillips. He's their inside linebacker. He's 53 tackles right now, but most of them are assists. He's got 34 assists. He's probably the next in line to come there after Devin White takes off. That ejection was just you don't see too much of it in the NCAA level of the controversial hits, but I didn't think it was anywhere near a penalty. It's just
the last bad ejection, I think, NCAA wise, was Joey Bosa. The last game he played, I think it was against Notre Dame, the same game that Jalen Smith blew out his knee. Now, that Devin White ejection, I mean, it's been talked about since Saturday. That was the worst, absolute worst thing I've ever seen. And I watched Baker get nailed in the side of the head on Sunday, and I heard out of a ref's mouth he left the pocket so his head was okay to hit.
Yeah, that's not the rule whatsoever, but whatever. So let's get into the helmet sticker segment. So in the NCAA, players get awarded helmet stickers for pretty much anything good, right? You know, doing something great on game day.
Michigan players earned some helmet stickers this weekend.
Yep. So what we're going to do is
love you, Dwight.
It's a shot at Dwight. So what we're going to do, each of you are going to give your 3 helmet stickers out to anyone in the NCAA that you want. And we'll start with Andrew. Andrew, who are your top 3 helmet stickers to give away this week?
I was going to give my helmet sticker.
We do that again. One helmet sticker.
Oh, we're only going to do one? Okay. It says top 3. All right.
That's the next line down. Come on. No, I'm just kidding. You're good.
Wait, hold on. Why do you
Top
have 1 helmet sticker and then 3 helmet stickers?
3 Heismans.
Okay, got you. All right. Sorry, I'm tracking.
It's okay, man.
All right, so each of you are going to give away 1 helmet sticker to somebody that you think performed above average this past weekend. Andrew, who's your helmet sticker going to?
My first gut reaction for a helmet sticker was going to be to Devin Bush for that beautiful pregame performance. But out of respect to Dwight, I'm going to give it instead to the man who got the monkey off of Jake Frost. I almost said Jack Frost. Jake Frost or Scott Frost. Good Lord. Scott Frost's back in Adrian Martinez, their young freshman quarterback in Nebraska. Reminded me a lot of Taylor Martinez his freshman year. He came on, was lighting it up for Nebraska. He eventually fizzled out a little bit towards the end. I hope Adrian doesn't. But on Saturday, he went 25 for 29 passing, 276 yards, and 3 touchdowns. And then on the ground, he added 15 more rushing attempts for 125 yards and a touch. Just a complete game overall, over 400 total yards for him, 4 touchdowns. And you couldn't ask for a better performance from him. And I think we'll begin to see a lot more of that now that they have a win. They'll start to relax a little bit and get more into the flow of things.
I'm going to stick in the Big Ten, too, another freshman. Yeah, Rondale Moore, the freshman wide receiver from Purdue, who absolutely just lit up Ohio State. If you ever get a chance, look at the highlights from that game. His second touchdown, he took a swing pass out of the backfield and looked like he was going to get wrestled down. He broke like 6 tackles, I think. And he was
beast mode.
He's like, I don't have the stats in front of me. He's only like 5'11", 180, 190. He's a smaller dude. He plays out of the slot mostly. He's got 728 yards this year, 7 touchdowns. That's just pass catching. He's also runs. He's got a touchdown in the backfield. He also returns kicks. He's got over 1,000 all-purpose yards this year as a freshman, and he's a name you're going to know. And I guarantee he's available in your Devy league. So next year in that draft, snap him up.
Now, Andrew, is Adrian Martinez somebody that you were previously looking at maybe in Superflex leagues next year's rookie draft? And if not, is he now?
Well, he's a freshman. So
that makes sense. Let me re-ask the question.
Gotcha.
Now, Andrew, was Adrian Martinez somebody that you were looking at in Devy drafts coming up this next season? Or if he wasn't, is he now somebody that you'll be looking at drafting?
I think now he's definitely going to be on everyone's boards, or at least be watched. Like I said, I think with Nebraska coming out with the slowest start they could possibly have going winless, I'm sure a lot of people were down on him a little bit. But he's been consistent, putting up a lot of yards, running and passing all year. If he's available, or if you can get him cheap from somebody for a late future pick, I think he's definitely worth a lottery ticket, which is my favorite term.
Right, absolutely, especially since it's in the billions, right?
Exactly.
All right, so the next segment we're going to get into is the offensive and defensive Heisman. This is a fun one because this is a little bit of real-life football. So we're going to get a top 3 from each of you for the Heisman candidates. Andrew, who are your top 3 Heisman candidates?
I would have to say, I have to include Travis Etienne, as I mentioned earlier. He's really, I think, been a consistent force in that Clemson offense, especially with Kelly Bryant's not dismissal, but absence since he's leaving the program. He's just like a rookie quarterback in the NFL, a freshman quarterback in college. His best friend's going to be his running back, and he's really been helping him a lot. Another name, Dwayne Haskins. He looked bad on Saturday, but a good game against Michigan could make all that go away. He would have to really go 400 yards, 6 touchdowns, just completely ball out, which he could do. He did last year. He had the comeback against Michigan. And then number 1 is Tua. I mean, there's nobody else that needs to be talked about. It's Tua and everybody else. I think we can all agree. There's players to invite to the ceremony, but there's only one player leaving the ceremony with the trophy. 25 touchdowns, no picks. He hasn't played a fourth quarter all year. I mean, I could go on about Tua for forever.
And Tua, when asked, what do you fix? He cited a play where he fumbled the ball and said that that's what needs fixed. I mean, it was just a complete mistake. The snap was low. He fumbled the ball, and he took the reporter through the entire play as to what he needed fixed. And like you said, his stats are absolutely amazing. So only getting better, and seems to have the perfect demeanor for the NFL. Dwight, who are your top 3 guys? Obviously with Tua included.
Yeah, we kind of talked about that before the show. There's really only one defensive Heisman at this point, and it's Ed Oliver. He's currently 4th in most of what I've seen for overall Heisman. He's the only one that's putting up that kind of numbers that could be even in consideration for a Heisman, basically. He's got, let me see. His stats don't show out as much just because he draws like triple teams every game he plays, and he's still is pressuring quarterbacks and just wreaking all sorts of havoc. He's just a guy that, I mean, he's going to be absolutely hellacious on the next level. And if Bosa was in this, we'd be talking about him, obviously. A dark horse name that I really like is O'Shane Jimenez. He's from Old Dominion. He's currently, I think he's still leading the nation in sacks. He's got 8.5 sacks, and small school guy that's just absolutely a disruptive force. And then to add on, obviously, Tua. And then Kyler Murray is another one who's having a very underrated season. But, of course, there's always the monkey hanging over his head, whether he's going to play baseball or not. But he is completing 72% of his passes, 25 touchdowns, 2,000 yards. He's doing amazing things, picking up right where Baker left off. But there's always that. Is he going to play baseball? You never know.
All right, that's our Heisman candidates. Let's kick it off with the news and notes. First thing we're going to discuss is Rashawn Gary injury. Does that affect his draft stock any?
I don't think so. I mean, I do think he's probably going to end up doing the Joey Bosa thing and not come back. Good. He doesn't have a lot of incentive to come back at this point, unless they're going to, if they win a couple more and they stay in the hunt for a playoff spot, then maybe he'll come back and help them. I don't think it's going to affect his draft stock one bit.
I've seen him fluctuating in a couple mocks, going from being like a top 10 pick to I saw him at the back end of round 1, which seems a little bit off in my opinion. I think at worst case he falls to the teens maybe, but I mean, I'm a Browns fan. I think John Dorsey would snag him up real quick and they wouldn't get past them. There's a lot of teams that need D-line help. There's a lot of teams that just need defensive help in general. Look at what teams are putting up now, and Gary's a disruptor. I don't think – and it's just a shoulder injury, and he doesn't have a big track record of that. I think he'll be fine.
Hey, when I mentioned some of the players' names and kick it to you guys, could you go ahead and add the school and position when you discuss them in case the people haven't heard of them before?
You can skip past Devin White, too. I think we covered him.
We covered that. Yeah. All right, I'm going to jump in on Herbert. All right, so last week we talked about Herbert a little bit. Is he going to stay, do you guys think, or is he going to come out next year?
I ultimately think he's going to stay. He's going to come out. He needs to. If he comes out in 2020, he's going to be a second or third round pick. The class coming in 2020 is really loaded at quarterback. And this year, I mean, he's the number one. If he comes out, I think he'd be absolutely crazy not to come out this year.
I agree. I think if he doesn't come out this year, he's definitely not going to be the first or the second quarterback taken. Jake Fromm at Georgia and Tua at Alabama, everyone's already over them. I think there's teams that are starting to position themselves even potentially to put stuff together. I mean, you could see Oakland, John Gruden going after him maybe this year with an extra pick if he does declare. They aren't tied into Derek Carr after the year, but I do think Herbert, if he doesn't go, it's because his brother, I can't remember who pointed it out to me. I think it was Tim at Tim NFL posted or messaged me on Twitter saying how his brother is going to be a tight end there next year, and that'd be the only reason he stays. I get it, family's family, but there's a lot of money that he'll be losing. Right. He could go from $30 million to just a couple.
Right. So next, we're going to get into a little bit of strategy discussion. Love to do that here, practical application, so you can leave with something for your roster. This week, we're going to be talking about quarterbacks in Devy. So, Dwight, you wanted to talk a little bit about you want to kick that off on, Dwight? All right, I'm just going to introduce you, and then you and Andrew talk back and forth. That looks like how you guys wrote it down.
Okay.
All right, so this week we're going to talk a little bit about QBs and Devy to give you a little bit of advice on how you can roster quarterbacks for your Devy roster. Dwight, why don't you get us started on the quarterback conversation in Devy?
Right. Obviously, quarterbacks are a huge part of fantasy football. They're typically are the ones that score the most points. And Andrew, what is your strategy with Devy quarterbacks? Like, how many do you like to roster, like super flex and non-super flex?
I think if it's non-super flex, I'd probably say 2 max, just because you got so many teams and so many different types of offenses. It's just a little bit easier. You can kind of recycle them a little bit more. I think if it's a super flex, I like to go heavy on the quarterback there, just because you'll have different matchups each week, different play types, like I mentioned. I'd probably go 4 if you're, depending on how big your bench is, maybe even 5. Just because the more good ones you have, obviously, it sounds so simple, the less your opponent has.
Sure.
And I like mixing it up. Like, if you can get the Georgia, I can't think of his name, Georgia Tech's quarterback. They run the triple option offense. Zach Abbey at Navy, they have the triple option there as well. They're not going to pass the ball more than 3-5 times a game, but they're going to get you a lot of rushing attempts and a lot of touchdowns. So that's just an underrated thing. Everyone just likes to look at the air yards, but in college, you have quarterbacks that run for 150, 200 yards a game sometimes.
And as we're seeing, that can be deadly at the NFL level. If you can see those skills in the college game, they could definitely transfer at the NFL level. And that's kind of something good to bring up as well, is that they might be not attempting very many passes, but they might be a good passer. You know, just because they're in an offense that runs the triple option doesn't necessarily mean that they won't pass up well at the NFL level. So there's a competitive advantage you could have in your Devy league if you can identify these players as maybe above the training wheels that are put on them in college. So, Dwight, what are the hit rates on QBs? Talk to us a little bit about hit rate and what your experience with the quarterback hit rate has been.
I just found this crazy stat from 1990 to 2017. There were 47 quarterbacks taken in the first 16 picks, and only 9 played more than 1 season. That is absolutely insane if you think about it. Obviously, that doesn't factor in the late quarterbacks that did make it. Your Dak Prescott's, your Tom Brady, stuff like that. But there's definitely, the hit rate is it's pretty dicey, and I think it's definitely important to have several of them. And they're especially in Superflex, they're gold. I mean, some of the trade offers I've gotten for Trevor Lawrence in leagues are ridiculous. They're treating him like he's Aaron Rodgers almost already. So those ones that are the elite prospects are just, you've got to snap those guys up. They won't last. I mean, a lot of them don't make it, but if they do, you're set. Like, if you hit on 1 out of 3, you're basically set at the quarterback position for 10 to 15 years. And that's just an awesome feeling. So it's definitely important to have several, like Andrew said, and probably 2 if it's a 1 quarterback, or if you're just rebuilding, it doesn't hurt to have more. Just increase your rates of success, basically. And have as many as possible if you have super flex. I mean, if you've got the roster spots, a taxi squad, roster 6 or 8 of them. Screw it. I mean, you never have too many quarterbacks.
Right, strength in numbers. You both made good points, because Andrew made the point that if you've got the good quarterbacks, your opponents don't. Dwight, you made the good point that they are gold. So if you're not going to play them, that's fine. They're still a tradable asset. Next, what we want to get into is the weekend preview. We did the weekend preview last week. We were 0 for 2, am I right?
I just remember I got demolished by Clemson's D-line.
Demolished by Clemson. This week, we're going to preview the Florida and Georgia game. What are some prospects on offense and defense to watch in that big game? We're going to go offense to Andrew first.
I would say the biggest difference makers. See, I'm a Browns fan, thinking about Baker all the time. I think the biggest difference makers for Florida on offense are going to be the running backs with Scarlett and P. Ryan. Both have, I think, Scarlett has one more carry than Pirine does at this point. Both were able to carve up LSU's tough defense pretty easily, breaking off big runs. I'd like to see them continue to do that against Georgia. LSU's running backs were able to do that against them, so I'm hoping Florida will be able to do that as well. I say hoping as a Florida fan, so I apologize for sounding like a homer, but that's just how it's going to be with me. On defense, I think the biggest names to look at are Voshon Joseph and
Ja'Kai Polite.
And Dwight, I know you're big.
Just kick defense to Dwight so he can get in on this.
That's what I was going to do. I was getting there. I was like, I think on defense, that's going to be for you, Dwight.
Yeah. Dwight, just pick up on defense. You'll be able to edit it up.
Yeah.
All right, Ja'Kai.
And on defense, sorry.
All right, from Florida, I like Ja'Kai Polite as a defensive end. You see it on tape, man. You always see where he's at. He's one of those guys that really pops. He's got 7 sacks this year, 26 tackles, and those are the players that I love. You don't have to know. You don't have to look at the jersey. You don't have to look at the dreads, anything. You just know that player is. You always know where he's at. He's fun, so much fun to watch. Georgia's got DeAndre Baker. He's one of the top defensive backs in the country, so he's obviously going to prowl the secondary there. This game doesn't. Georgia's got a pretty good defense. Florida, you make fun of me from Michigan State. I think you're a little obsessed with Florida there, Andrew.
I'm hoping you don't get to rag on me next week. So,
all right. So next game preview we've got is Iowa, which they're still in the running for the Big Ten West at Penn State. So who are we previewing in the Iowa-Penn State game, Dwight?
Just real quick, just look and see how the quarterbacks bounce back. Both quarterbacks had atrocious weeks last week, so it's just an important game. And living in Big Ten country, to me, that's the games that I tend to watch, and it's still a dogfight. Penn State's kind of sort of in it. They've got 2 losses in the Big Ten, so both teams are going to be looking to bounce back, especially the quarterbacks in particular.
And Andrew, let's talk about Kentucky and Missouri. You've got Josh Allen versus Drew Luck, and it's not the Josh Allen that can throw the ball over a mountain.
No, it's the Josh Allen that's going to be putting Drew Luck on his back, I think. Josh Allen's been a dominant force all year. And again, if you look at Dwight's rankings on Dynasty Happy Hour, which we do have up, he's really high on as well he should be. He's a great edge rusher. I think he's going to be a force in this upcoming draft, and he'll be working his way, maybe even to the top 10 when things are all said and done. As for Drew Lock, he came out of his toughest stretch of the year having less than 50% completion percentage. So his completion percentage is more accurate to the Josh Allen that's in the NFL when he was at Wyoming than anything else. But no, Drew Lock, he has the big arm, and everyone keeps trying to force the Pat Mahomes narrative on him. It's not happening. I'm really not sold on Drew Lock at all. I wasn't coming into the year. Missouri being in the SEC is tough. I think they're more built still for being in the Big 12 like they used to be. But no, Drew Lock, it's more or less I just want to see Josh Allen perform more than anything.
All right, and we're going to predict upsets again. So the next big upset, I'm going to go to you first, Dwight. Who do you want to talk about?
I don't know. Watch NC State versus Syracuse, and NC State's really got to bounce back, but Syracuse is an incredibly feisty, tough team. They can definitely shock a lot of teams in the country. I think they're 4-3, but they're a lot better than that, and it's going to be interesting to see how Finley and Harmon bounce back in that game. I think Syracuse is going to get them.
Yeah, no, Syracuse took it to Clemson earlier in the year too, and their quarterback Eric Dungy. He's been playing really well all year too, so they're definitely worth watching. My upset pick, I got to go with it. My Florida Gators going to Jacksonville. World's largest outdoor cocktail party, as it used to be dubbed, but now it's not anymore. I think Florida, even though they're in the top 10 now, finally, going against a tough Georgia team, this is really going to determine, I think, who they send from the SEC West, as it usually does every year. To go lose to Alabama in the SEC title game. I am hoping it's my Gators. I think the biggest thing is they're going to be able to control the clock with Scarlett and Pirine running the ball. Felipe Franks, quarterback for Florida, can't turn the ball over. and I want to see Tyreek Cleveland, who at one point was being talked about as a pro prospect. He only has, I'd say, a little over 10 catches this year. I'd like to see him make a couple big plays as he used to in the last 2 years when he was a sophomore or freshman. I think it's going to be a good game. It's the game of the week. College game day is going to be down there in Jacksonville, so definitely going to be worth a watch.
So you talk about watching. We need to watch some players. It's starting to be about that time, ladies and gentlemen, for Dynasty folks to start diving into these college players, whether you like it or not. It feels like it was just yesterday that we were watching film on the 2018 class. So let's start looking at players. Dwight, what are your 3 players to watch this weekend?
I think we've mentioned them all in this episode already. Drew Lock, Ryan Finley, and Herbert from Oregon. You want to see those quarterbacks bounce back. Like, it is that time where they're going to have to really step it up, and it's going to affect their draft stock if they don't perform. The NFL is a quarterback needy league, but that doesn't mean they're going to. Blake Bortles went number 1. Anyways, it doesn't mean they're going to necessarily just clamor for these quarterbacks if they don't show what they can do. So I want to see them step up.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like I said earlier, this quarterback class, somebody's got to take the reins. Just if I heard that Herbert was maybe staying, and I'm Ryan Finley, Drew Lock, Will Grier, who I think needs to step up too they had a bye week last week. He threw 3 red zone interceptions the week before and an upset loss to Iowa State. If you heard, I would hear ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching in my head, because you can improve your draft stock. You could be the first quarterback taken. You've seen teams reach on them. Like you just mentioned, Blake Bortles was the 3rd overall pick. Emmanuel was taken in the teens. So, I mean, teams will reach. There are needs, and teams panic. Another player I want to see not necessarily bounce back, but continue to perform, who's been on an upwards trend, is Jonathan Taylor, running back out of Wisconsin that everyone's oohing and ahhing about for next year in the 2020 draft. And then, as you mentioned too, Dwight, Trace McSorley, quarterback for Penn State. He's not used to losing, and he's lost twice this year, and I believe both losses were at home. I know the Ohio State one was. He's not used to that, so I want to see how he responds to it. He may not be a pro prospect, but if you're in a Devy league or a college league, you love Trace McSorley. He's all sorts of points for you, running and passing the ball.
I love it. And we've got 2 fan questions this week. Last week we only had 1, so doubling the rate of return. I love it in the second week. Dwight, I'm going to kick the fan questions to you. I know you love this segment. Go ahead and hit on those fan questions.
Yeah, Mike LaValle at DHH Miggy, part of the Dynasty Happy Hour, asked which running back is the first off the board in a somewhat stacked rookie class, 2019. What do you think, Andrew?
I would have to say, I was thinking about this before when I saw it. I still am leaning towards Montgomery just because of the past workload. This year he hasn't shown it nearly as much, but I'm really liking, and I can't remember who it was on the Dynasty Happy Hour podcast told us not to talk about him. Benny Snell at Kentucky. He's really, last week he put up 160 against a tough Vanderbilt defense, who's always coached and plays really well. I want to see him keep going up. I think he could even become the RB1 when it's all said and done for this April's draft. I like a lot of what he does and how he plays. He's definitely one to watch.
And also, along the same line, staying with running backs, who are some of the running backs that we're looking to draft in the first round of 2020 rookie drafts? This comes from Adam at AJ Willie 2. Those guys named Adam. Jeez. All right, anyways, 2020 running backs.
Jonathan Taylor, as we talked about, Akers down at Florida State. Florida State as a whole this year hasn't really had a lot to be happy about. I think Akers is a bright spot for the future. I think next year they bounce back. And then Dobbins at Ohio State. I think he's really going to jump next year because Weber is going to leave. I think he might even be a senior. I can't even remember. Cut that out. But
I have Etienne as the first one. I absolutely love him, and I think he's going to come off the board in the first round. So I'd be pretty surprised, especially if they can give him a full role. If they give him a full workload next year, yeah, look out.
Agreed. We did have one more question.
One more,
it was a fun one. And yes. Adam, you can even maybe chime in on this if you know anybody. Jacob Henry who edits all of our beautiful articles, wants to know as the air in college football. So Dwight,
even though I hate him, you got to go with Chase Winovich, I think.
I was going to say, I think that's the unanimous choice.
Even though he thinks he's Michigan State's big brother, we'll find out.
I think close second is Trevor Lawrence. It's close second.
Yeah, he's like touchdown Jesus. He looks amazing. Yeah.
Touchdown Jesus. That is a perfect
no.
All right, so let's get the final words in. I'm your host, Adam Wilde. You can find me at DHH_Adam. You'll also find me ranting right after this on the Dynasty Owner's Manual. Andrew, can you tell us where they can find you and also your final word?
My final word is my Gators are going to pull the upset in Jacksonville against Georgia. I'm going to sound like a broken record here. I'm probably going to have some egg on my face next week when DeAndre Swift and Elijah Holyfield run all over them. And Jig Fromm and Justin Fields are going to dominate them as well. But, hey, I'll go out on my shield like a Spartan. Did that for you there, Dwight.
Yeah, I know.
And
keep stomping on my logo. It's all good.
Devin Bush did enough of that. You can find me on Twitter at DHH_Mandrew. And you can find us all over Twitter most of the time. We're pretty active.
Yep, and I am the FF People's Champ. You can find me at writing out articles for Dynasty Happy Hour and Fantasy Authority. I don't have any juicy final words this week. I'm still kind of in like a state of catatonic denial from last weekend. So
you just want me to be the only one looking bad next week.
I don't have anything this week. We're probably just going to get throttled by Purdue. So yeah, it's sucks being a fan sometimes.
All right, and that's Devy Manual. Thank you all for coming out.